All right, hi everyone, calling to order the Board of Commissioners in our scheduled administrative meeting. It is June 21st, 2022, the time's 1 o'clock. Commissioner Hensley and Commissioner Kelly Minty Morris are in the room. Commissioner DeGroot will be here in just a second. Sir, have you had a chance to review the meeting?
I did. Yes,
Look
ma'am.
good?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so those will stand approved. It looks like we have several items related to HR, so the director, come on up.
You're first.
Yeah, Sheriff's Office exception to policy is what we have.
Oh, no. How do you start with exception? It means breaking the rules, which is a fancy way to say it.
Bending, not right, bending.
All right, let's get to it.
This is on behalf of Sheriff Chris Caver and Captain Brian Bryson. We're seeking your approval for an exception to the HR Policy and Procedure Manual, Section 20, recruitment and selection. We're requesting permission to offer Michael Ashley a corrections deputy position at step 5 of the PH07 pay range, which is $28.35 per hour. Mr. Ashley is an experienced corrections deputy bringing over 9 years of law enforcement experience to the department. The department has the money in their budget.
Right. You had a chance to check in with their liaison? Is their liaison supportive?
I'm absolutely supportive, and I just want to make a comment real quick. I think this is a policy that Klamath County needs to dig into a little bit more, and maybe really look at providing this signature coming from the HR director, not the Board of Commissioners. That's one thing. The second thing I'll mention is, when I was the chief of police, I found a significant amount of value in paying for experience. So there were times that the city allowed me to bend the rules and hire somebody and pay for that experience and that training that you're obtaining. So I've seen this, and I'm fully supportive of it. But I think just bigger picture, maybe into the future, we can talk more about this being your wheelhouse, not mine.
Well,
Move to approve.
second. So we
Thank
have
you.
a motion on the table to offer Michael Ashley the corrections deputy position at step 5 as outlined above and presented by HR. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Amanda, step,
Okay.
oh, do you want to do, oh no,
Sure.
that's community corrections, sorry, not you. Step increase TDA. I saw the DA is here.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So this is on behalf of E. Costello. We're seeking your approval to move Amy Cook to Chief DDA Step 3 effective July 1st, 2022. On May 24th, the BOCC approved the creation of the Chief Deputy DA position and the promotion of Ms. Cook to this position. The request was approved as Step 1, which represented at least a 5% increase. However, the department would like to request that Ms. Cook be placed at Step 3, which is $9,176 a month. Due to vacancies, the department anticipates having the funds to cover this reclassification, and Ms. Cook's seniority date will not change.
I would move that we approve the request to move Amy Cook to Chief Deputy DA Step 3 as outlined above.
I'll second.
So we have a motion on the table. Any questions for the DA's office?
Is this a way to try to incentivize retention with her? Is that what
Yes.
we're trying to do here?
Yes, we are in a way doing that. And it's also as we've had Josh left last week, Cole leaves this week, and we've been reassigning cases, and as that has happened, her caseload has, I would say it's fair to say, tripled, if not quadrupled. And we will have young DDAs that will be under her supervision and my supervision. And so that's basically, the workload is a lot more substantial than originally anticipated. So yes.
Everyone good with me calling the question? Okay. I'll call the question then. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. And finally, thank you, we have community corrections.
You good with that?
Thank you.
Director Hartman,
Sir?
So, we received an email last week from Community Corrections. They have 2 work group leaders right now. And The department is finding that they don't need 2 of them, so we'd like to lay off 1 of them. I know last time we laid off employees at the fairgrounds, it came in front of you, so we just wanted to bring you all up to speed on the situation and get your blessing to move forward with starting that process. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so we've, since of course the passage of a lot of community corrections reform bills in the last year, we've just been watching our worker numbers diminish to almost nil now. In the last 28 days, 128 days, excuse me, we've had 114 people show up for work crew, so that's pretty much less than 1 a day, if not 1 a day. And having 2 supervisors just doesn't make a lot of sense at this point, unfortunately. But there's no remedy for it. There's short of law changes again, which are slim to none. It's just a symptom of the legislation and the times. So we just feel like we have financially, it doesn't make any sense to pay 2 people to watch 1 person or even, we're going to have to make some harder decisions about work group programs overall here in the coming months, I think, but they're going to short of any legislative change. And now, of course, with the new OSHA rules that kicked in on June 15th, and then the smoke rule, that's the heat rule and the smoke rule on the 15th of July, it'll be next to impossible to put a crew in the field, even if we had one, because of the training requirements. And, becoming impossible.
Is there any HR/union/process?
So we have to give them a 30-day notice, so we can issue that, and it's by seniority, so we know the employee that it would be. And then they have the right to recall if something did happen and Aaron got a huge work crew, they have the right to go back.
So that was kind of along the lines of my question as well. There is a bump down process. Okay. And then the person that's going to get laid off, Aaron, is there any opportunity for reassignment somewhere?
Likely not with me. I certainly won't be hiring any positions like that going forward. And it's in a sense, it's a fairly unique position within the county. So if there's something else in the county that would be somewhere, I'm not aware of that.
This is informational, not action.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to bring you up to speed there.
I'll just nope.
Thank you. We're good.
So this is just bad legislation coming to rest. So, I'll leave it at that.
Should I try to find something? Okay.
I have an idea.
Okay.
Let's check.
All right.
Thank you.
I have a feeling, Melissa, your item pretty short. Yeah, why don't you come up? Sorry, I'm gonna
we're good.
pause you because yours will be longer.
Hey.
It's a little bit longer, so.
Yeah.
Yes, so everybody goes before bed. No, I'm just kidding, I'm kidding.
That way we get to spend quality time.
Right?
Good to see you again, my friend.
All right. Dr. Maxey, what do you got?
Dr. Miles Maxey, Director for Developmental Disability Services. Our state partner, the Office of Developmental Disability Services through the Oregon Department of Human Services, is offering grant opportunities to case management entities such as our entity, our department, utilizing ARPA funds for infrastructure, primarily focused on outreach opportunities, connecting. This is something that Commissioner Minty Morris and I have talked about, is how do we outreach specifically to our further out communities, and also looking at opportunities to develop better relationships with our tribal partners, which is something that was fractured pretty significantly 5-6 years ago. And so I'm just coming to make sure, get approval, I guess, that I can continue to pursue that grant opportunity through them. I'm working with HR to get definitive numbers on what that position would look like. I'm looking at asking for a 2-year position that then we would absorb into our budget at the conclusion of that, for essentially what we'd call a service equity coordinator that would work on what I've already mentioned, plus partnerships with KVH and other community partners. But yeah, we're looking, it's probably about $200,000 that we're looking at.
Thoughts, concerns,
Well, just
questions?
the obvious question is that we kind of have a process for permission to apply for grants and stuff like that. Is there a reason we're doing it outside of that process? Is there like a time constraint that we're worried about?
It's due by July 18th.
Okay.
So and maybe I'm just not aware of what that process is. I had reached out to Natalie and asked, and this was what I thought I needed to do, was to come to you all to seek approval to move forward.
So the typical, there's like a blue sheet process where the application for the grant is reviewed by council and finance to figure out what the obligations for the county are, and then it comes to us on a Tuesday morning. That would be the typical blue sheet process.
I can
So you
work
can
on that.
follow this up with that.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so-
'cause-
But other than that, I mean, just like,
Yeah,
if we're just talking about concept, but then you're still looking to go through the process, I would say
Right.
conceptually fine, but I know nothing about the grant.
Right, and truly, like, this is one of 4 grants that ODDS is putting out, and they haven't put a lot. Like, Natalie reviewed and was like, well, this is pretty simple-ish, the way it's laid out. Like, they haven't really laid out a lot of the obligations, which I'm assuming if we were to get approved, they would lay some of those things out a little more in depth. But, yeah, there's like one simple affidavit statement saying that we actually are a case management entity that they want us to attest to. But
You good with moving forward? We're going for blue
absolutely.
shot. Okay, blue sheet. Okay, so go ahead.
so I
and
need
just
to
run-
do the blue sheet prior to even submitting the application,
Yeah,
correct?
but you have tentative approval to move it forward. Sounds like you'll have plenty of time.
Who's the best person to work on with that blue sheet? Because we've never done this before in my department.
You can contact our staff, they can walk you through.
Yes, Andy.
She'll walk you right through.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Golden, what are you here for?
Other county business and continued discussion of the HB 4004.
Okay. Right, what about you now? Taking notes for Vicky. All right, you're up.
I'm up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hi, Vicky. But then you don't get to tell us. No,
Hey,
sure.
man.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Better on speed dial, she said.
That's okay. Bring up a tree. It's okay. We should be logging.
Thank you. There you go. I got pretty good news.
You got good, hey,
Usually you say something about
I
that.
know, I'm really trying to be
You know.
better. I'm trying to be a better human.
You're doing a good job.
Thanks.
Me too.
I've given you 0 hard time so far.
I like it.
I know, but.
It's all good. Okay, these are
Just-
some extras here.
I don't know how that new attitude's gonna cost me, but we'll figure out here.
It's not So the second packet is just some reading stuff for cyber and another time when you have time, just to kind of see what's going on in the cyber market. A little interesting out
I've been
there,
dying to know.
for sure. We have some challenges ahead of us, but
We do.
we'll discuss that.
Okay.
So this, I'm Bill Gilmore, Great Basin Insurance. So this is our 7/1/22 renewal packet. And on the second page is just a brief agenda, so we'll look at the county loss reports. This is through CIS, they won't be the workers' comp losses. And then we'll talk about the renewals that are up and coming. And then any questions, comments, those types of things. So if you get to the slide titled Auto Liability, You can see the last 2 years, we've had a few claims. Prior to that, 4 or 5 years, we were doing really good. We've had a couple claims over the last couple of years, but generally speaking, we're not doing too bad. We're averaging about 2.5 claims a year, auto liability. So for as many, we have like 300 and some vehicles out there, so it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. The next slide is our auto physical damage. A little bit of a different story here. Last couple of years, we've been paying out on some more vehicles. And keep in mind, a couple of years ago, we actually, we placed most of our higher valued vehicles with full coverage. So now those are the ones that are making up this, the numbers here. We're running a little bit higher than the pool, but still only about 2.9 annual. So not terrible.
Do you want me to ask questions as you go, or you want me to
Oh,
write them
absolutely.
down at the end?
Anytime you
Okay,
want.
I didn't want to interrupt you,
No,
so
you're fine.
some people like it.
Anytime is fine.
Okay, so I want to ask specifically about police cars. Are we insuring police cars through the life of owning that car, or are they insured for a few years and then the county is basically self-insured after that? So if we ding a car, are we paying for it ourselves after a certain point in time, or could the sheriff's office have a 20-year-old car that they have a $2,000 fender for that you cover?
So what we have done is we've eliminated we put all vehicles on liability that are $20,000 in value or less. Anything at the perceived value that we show on our record is then insured for full comp and collision.
Okay.
So as we review those values, if they fall below that mark, then we would run them down to liability only. But obviously we can look at it differently as well.
Okay, so then it kind of, sorry, I didn't interrupt you, go
Well,
ahead.
that's okay. I was just gonna say, so yes, we're technically kind of self-insured. So once a claim hits that borderline of our deductible for $10,000, it doesn't actually get turned into insurance. It just goes through our office and my office, and we repair it that way.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so then our next slide is our property slide, which up until last year was doing phenomenal, right? But we've got a little claim going there, so and that's a work in progress. And Leslie and I chat every now and then to make sure things are flowing through. And I've not heard of any challenges so far that haven't been addressed. Okay.
Is that just the placeholder? The 4.5?
The 4.5, yeah, that's a reserve on the transition building, or excuse me, the transfer station.
Perfect.
We're under construction now, right?
We have
Ish.
ordered the building, so yes,
Ish.
we are in the process of rebuilding.
Yes. So we're ish now.
We're
Ish.
starting that stage.
Took us a while to get to ish.
Yes. A lot of roadblocks there, but we got through it. Okay, and then our next slide is our general liability slide. Prior to this current term that we're in, we were kind of going the wrong way, but you can see this year we've done much better. Okay, our average claims on the general liability side is about 11.3 a year, and so just remember the fact that this year we've gone down, because it's going to kind of go into some of my discussion later when we talk about the actual quote as a possibility that we can look at. Okay. Next slide, the next two slides are really claims by department and or by coverage. So I don't know if I need to go into significant detail there. Obviously, if you have questions afterwards, you can let me know and I can get you the details of those.
This is just all claims, this could be auto, it could be personal, I mean.
Right, so if you look at the first chart and it's kind of a gray row, that's AL is auto liability.
Okay.
And then the APD is auto physical damage.
Got it,
And then you have general liability.
got it.
Then you have property is the PR. And then the next slide would be just by a straight department.
Okay, I see how you're doing it.
Under property.
Okay, got
Okay.
it, thank you.
Yep.
So to go along with that one, you're just behind our annual meeting that we actually do come in for the safety committee and the claims that have been turned in through the county, because these ones are just what was turned into insurance.
Okay.
So just so you're in the loop as
Right.
well, it does come back around every year to the total claims that are turned into the county, not just
Sure, okay, thank you.
overall paid ones.
That's perfect.
And then the liability claim summary, so this is, when they took a look at your general liability experience, the two charts on the left just compare the 21-22 to the 22-23 incurred. And every year, the last year falls off and then we get tracked on the current year. And then over to the right of that are the open claims currently, and those are our reserves sitting on the general liability reserves currently. And I made a note, if you want me to email you a copy of those claims, I can. I just didn't know who I was handing this stuff to outside of you folks. So,
We can pull those for you as well.
Yeah.
If you need.
okay, so any questions so far on just the losses? Okay, so the next slide is our safe work comp. This is the renewal slide. Klamath County is currently on a 2-year retro liability plan with a 5-year look back. Based on the renewal that's up and coming, they've decreased the overall premium to $630,580 from the $773,528. So we had a good change in direction there, and that partially is due to our mod factor going from 0.91 to 0.92 to 0.81. So that's good right there. That's an excellent trend. Our frequency was up a little bit. We had 31 claims as opposed to 24, which is what they expect, and that's how they rate the county on. The premium factors are going to go up a little bit. Lots of reasons behind that, but mainly just the COVID issues that they're having and then trying to adjust for just overall claims, not just in Klamath County, but everywhere.
COVID's
Yeah. So the left box is our current 2-year retro plan, which had a basic premium of $177,888 with a maximum premium of $1.160142 million. Historically, we've always chosen the lowest premium factor, so the next chart over is the 22 to 24 quote, and where the little red arrow is, that would be the lowest maximum premium factor for the next renewal, if that makes sense. But I still recommend, based on your history, the work that Leslie's been doing and your entire team, to continue with the retro plan, because it's still a very good program, especially when claims are down and the costs are down, because it's kind of like a self-insurance program, but you still have some coverage through SAFE. So that would be my recommendation, just to stay with that plan.
Questions or thoughts on that?
Okay. The next set of slides is our CIS review. I wanted to quickly kind of point out our deductibles as they are currently written. So currently our general liability deductible is 0. Our property deductible is $50,000. Within that property schedule, we have 73 buildings, a little over 148 million in buildings that are insured. And then we have 53 structures that had fallen below the 50,000 mark, or they just were determined not to insure. Okay. Our auto deductibles are 5,000 comp, 5,000 collision on vehicles that are over 20,000 in value. And we have 158 vehicles with comp and collision with an average reported value of 72,000. And then we have 171 vehicles in liability with an average value of 15,000. Our equipment, last year we removed a bunch of equipment below 25,000. I think everything came off the schedule as below 25,000, but we kept the deductible at 10. So that left 92 pieces of equipment, and you have about a little over 13 million in pieces of equipment with an average value of 144,000. So that's currently on the schedule.
Do we calculate the value of our cars as just the Kelley Blue Book value, or to include the equipment in it?
Sheriff's Office, we include the equipment in it.
The only deductible change outside of us making changes is they did add a 10% up to $10,000 employment practices liability deductible. So on any claim that is going to go through and be paid out, there will be a deductible on those if it's employment related. Okay, real quick on the next slide, we have this is just a brief discussion on their annual meeting and rates. You can see the projected budgets that they had for liability and auto was at 15%, property and auto. Physical damage was 20%, properties were automatically increased 10% to deal with inflation, increased cost of construction, those types of things. They added a charge for cyber, and we'll talk a little bit more about cyber in a few minutes. They have a new program. It's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but tier 3 hasn't yet been created, so it's still in process. We'll talk a little bit more about that. They changed the drone. They are not charging for drone liability. If we want coverage on our drones, they need to be on the equipment schedule, and they'll only do drones that are 55 pounds and less.
We own a drone?
I believe
Several of them.
there's 2 of them.
Okay, you.
And I need to look and make sure they're on the schedule because we just did a bunch of stuff on the drones and paperwork here recently, so I will do that. So Klamath County's renewal overall increase is 12.57%. So it was within what they had projected. And then there's the breakdowns. Our property obviously is up a little bit due to them looking at the reserves for the property claim. So this year on this is the CIS portion of it. You can see the expiring premium 21-22. That doesn't account for any changes. I mean, I know we get lots of changes throughout the year, adding autos, adding equipment, removing autos, removing equipment. The renewal that I just went through, the 12.5%, is the 22-23 renewal. The optional renewal is something I wanted to talk about. So, Derek, when you and I met a few months ago, we talked about property deductibles.
Yep.
And so I went back to CIS and I said, what would it look like if we did a $100,000 deductible and a $250,000 deductible?
Thank you.
They would only agree to give me the option at $100,000 because they are not set up to do a $250,000 deductible. And so far, we're the only county that has asked for that, and they didn't have the rates. So I made a note down here that at a $100,000 deductible, it's only saving the county $5,000. So I didn't think that that was really worth it. I mean, it's not something I would recommend to any private organization if we're only saving $5,000 for that big of a difference.
Sure.
But I did look at doing a liability deductible. That's not something that we've done before. It does provide some savings. It's a little bit of a risk because sometimes you have a fair amount of claims. Sometimes they come down. You're averaging about 13 to 14 claims. But in general, if we did that on this renewal, it would reduce, and I have it down there, about a $134,000 reduction in premium.
What would be the size of that deductible, did you say?
10,000.
10,000.
It didn't make a lot of sense to go much higher than that or any lower because it really isn't providing any benefit. The 10,000 looked to be about the sweet spot according to CIS, if that's the route that you would like to take.
Okay.
The other options are, we can do more self-insurance on autos. We've talked about that before. We can look at reducing our equipment list and reducing, raising the deductible on equipment. We can look at eliminating more equipment that maybe falls below a certain mark because there's a fair amount of premium just in the physical damage of autos and the equipment list themselves. So that's the options that I have so far.
I'd be interested to see what it looks like if we insured the vehicles for just the vehicle cost, not the computers in the cars and those types of things. I feel like maybe we might be shooting ourselves in the foot when we're looking at a total package on a police car, for example, and let's say the car's worth 15, but it's got $6,000 worth of equipment in it, it's still only a $15,000 vehicle.
Mhm.
So if we run into a stop sign with it, it's still just a $15,000 vehicle. It has nothing to do with the equipment in it.
Right.
So I'd be interested to know how many of those vehicles can actually drop off to just liability if we calculate just their Kelly Blue Book cost of that vehicle.
Okay.
Because that's all we're fixing.
Right.
Because the majority of the time you just strip the equipment, put it in the next car anyway.
Right, unless it gets rolled or totaled.
Right, I mean, and there are times, it catches on fire, there are times where you're gonna lose equipment, but I think I've seen that once in my
Right.
28-year career. So I think we might be actually hurting ourselves by over-insuring some of our police cars if we're counting the value of the equipment in it.
So the rate structure, and I'll have to go back and look at the calculation, is not gonna provide a lot of savings by reducing the value, the reported value. In the end, it may hurt you because if we did get a vehicle totaled and we reduced that value and we saved $50, but then there wasn't enough value to replace the vehicle with the equipment because it got damaged.
But wouldn't we have insurance on the equipment?
Well, the maximum they'll pay for that vehicle is what is on that. for
Right, but we buy the equipment separate and put it in the car. We're still just buying a car from Lithium.
I don't know if all the equipment comes in it or not, or is it separate?
It's separate,
It's
they
separate.
take it to another place up there.
Okay. What we can look at for sure.
But you're right, it could be nickels when you're looking at that much money.
Right.
I get it, but still, I feel like
Yeah, and
it's taxpayers' money.
No, I agree. They have, and I can't remember the formula. There's a formula for a certain range of vehicles, this much money, and then, so if we take them down and fall below the 20, then we just move it to liability. We can look at those independently for sure. What about the equipment schedule? Do you want to look at moving the limit of what we insure now, which is 25,000 and up? Do you want to look at moving that higher? Leave it the same?
To make that call, I need to look at the list of the equipment. I mean, because I think that we're getting to a point where, the break in value, we have a lot of cheap, inexpensive, smaller items, less expensive items.
Mhm.
And then you have a huge jump to a $400,000 grader, right?
Right.
Or, these very large pieces of equipment. I don't think we're gonna capture very many pieces by
Right.
making a change from 25 to 50, I guess is what I'm saying. The number of pieces we capture would be pretty small.
Yeah, it might drop off a few side-by-sides or four-wheelers
Right.
or trailers, but you're right, the majority of what's left is larger equipment at the
Exactly.
dumps and the
Right.
road shop and
But that being said, we wouldn't, it's not gonna be a lot.
No, I mean, when we did it last time, there was a fair amount because you had a lot. That
We had a lot of little stuff. I mean,
25.
Yeah, insuring radios, just little stuff.
Okay. What do you think about the GL deductible?
So just doing basic math, right, we're averaging 13. I think that's starting to go down, I think that we need to continue to work on policies and trainings that continue to drive that down, but at worst case, we're a wash, right? We save $130,000 at 10 grand a pop, at worst case, we're a wash. And if we continue to do a better job over time to get the number of claims down, we're gonna be money ahead. So I would be in favor of taking a hard look at that, if not just saying, yeah, we should go ahead and move that direction.
I agree.
Okay. Sounds like there's agreement on that.
So next on the list is our cyber liability. So currently, we are insured with HDI. So last year, we did not go with CIS Cyber. We bought a standalone commercial policy through HDI. It was $2 million coverage. We had a $10,000 deductible. HDI is getting out of the business, which isn't surprising because they came in with a very low premium and I think they got hurt in general, so they're out. CIS has now come back into the market and they've offered $50,000 of coverage for $7,500. So there's $7,500 in that prior slide that was built into that. I'm not a fan of their coverage.
Just reading your bullet points, I wasn't a fan.
I do not have the quote from the new carrier yet. I hope to have it in a couple days. I just got them final revenue numbers yesterday. And so they hope to have it either later today or by tomorrow. What we have seen in the marketplace is anywhere from 75 to 150% changes in the premiums, increases mostly on cyber because the market's getting more difficult, which is kind of why I printed this up just to give you a little bit of history on what's going on in the market. So I don't have an answer, but my guess is, you know, last year we were 10, I would guess that we're going to be at least double that. If we went with CIS, the most coverage we can get right now is this tier 2, which is 200,000 coverage. It's not even, and it would be a fair amount more expensive, and it's just not going to provide us the coverage that we need.
I mean, it's just not a lot of coverage for the cost. For me, I'd rather, if we're talking about trying to do something, I'd rather invest that in prevention versus coverage, right? In additional backups, whatever, you know, to make sure that if we receive some type of cyber attack, that we're able to recover. You know, when it comes to the cyber attacks that we have experienced, which have been fairly minimal, but it's really been us doing notifications and those types of things based on PII. Those are just going to happen from time to time because people make stupid clicks. But let's just start what they are, right?
Yeah. And HDI did it on the last claim, in my opinion. They did a pretty good job, and it was expensive. It was over $100,000, if I remember correctly, for them to do what they needed to do. But
so was that a PII? That was just a bad click. So if the employees are watching, bad clicks are expensive.
Yes, they are. And it seems to be our high-risk departments that make those bad clicks so far.
So anyway, I hope to have the quote. I'll get it to Leslie, and then we can go. But
So, I
yes.
just got a quick question. I think back to the days where we didn't even have this conversation. Wasn't that great?
It was
This
awesome.
wasn't even a thing.
Oh man, yes.
I know. It makes me wonder what we're going to be talking about in 20 years. Anyway,
Retirement.
this happened again.
Right.
Second time. I remember when this happened in the city as well, and we lost a bunch of data, and it was awful. And trying to recover, it was awful. So I get it, but this doesn't buy us data back. So what does this really get for us? You said it was 100,000. What, their work?
So yes, so this last claim, they actually ended up hiring an attorney. It was a lot of not only county employee information, but outside clientele information, mental health information, doctor information, child, family information at all. There was over 300 and some people, and they had to vet each one of those individuals' information that was out there was breached. So they literally took the time that we don't have the team to put together and search through every single email for what information was sent out. The other part of that was coverage for a year for the individuals who signed up that were affected for like
credit.
Life Alert or something like that gives them information.
Thank you.
And I would expect that the new company, assuming we get an offer, will do the same thing as far as what their offerings are. I just haven't seen it yet. So.
Be interested. But you're right, the CIS I'm not interested in. There's just not enough coverage for them.
No.
They also did send out the notifications to each one of the people, did all the mailings. We reviewed all the letters, approved the letters, put the information in with them, but they did all the notification points as well.
Thank you for that.
One of the couple of things that I pulled out of here, but one of the things that is definitely becoming something that's new is multi-factor authentication for any remote access. So any laptops, iPads.
We do that now.
Okay, good. And then I just noted the handout. So non-owned aviation liability, we currently have a 2-year policy. We're in the 2nd year of that policy. So obviously the premium is the same. It's the $8,500. It's $2 million limit, $10,000 deductible.
Yeah.
Okay. Last year, we lowered that limit from $5 million, so I assume you want to stay at the $2 million. So this year, we have the pesticide pollution GL and excess. We had four companies, 3 of them came back with declining it, and then Scottsdale, who's our current carrier, agreed to continue. So the way I broke it down was the general liability, which is your underlying $1 million per occurrence, $2 million aggregate. The prior term was the $16,055. The renewal term premium is $16,224. The excess liability, which provides an additional $1 million over the top of the $1 million, so $2 million per occurrence. The prior term was $41,02, and the renewal term was $44,85. I put a few notes there. Both of those last year, the terrorism was rejected on those. So I would imagine if you move forward that's what you would do again, because I don't see how terrorism would impact these policies. And then there is a new cannabis exclusion on here. If something happens to somebody's personal property and it's related to cannabis, it would be excluded. So if they were trying to claim that the county damaged their cannabis operation growing, there would be an exclusion on that. And then wildfire exclusion here again, that really isn't applicable.
90% of our cannabis grows are illegal, so if we spray it, cool.
So any questions on the GL and access related to the weed department essentially?
Is the pesticide increase, the renewal increase, just a product of our markets right now, or did we have claims that pushed that up?
So yeah, no claims. The market, in fact, Scottsdale's minimum premium is $25,000, but they agreed, since they've been on this account for a fair amount of time now, to keep it where it was. The change in renewal, I believe, is the fees and taxes, not really the actual base premium itself.
Thank you.
And then our contractor pollution liability is in its 2nd year of its 2-year program, which goes along with the pesticide pollution. And it's $5 million and $25,000 deductible, but we paid that in full in 21. So there's no premium due there. Okay. The next steps, if you want to move forward, I think last year you authorized Leslie to sign all these documents, so I didn't know if that's how you want to do it this year. We found a fair amount of signatures on the SAFE, CIS, the aviation automatically renewed, and then there's some signatures on the weed control, and then the cyber is still in the process.
Is everyone comfortable with moving forward with authorizing the risk manager to sign this?
I am, with a slight bit of hesitancy. I wouldn't mind seeing what kind of difference are we talking about if we were to take those patrol cars and really look at what's their real value, not their total value. And I'm just really curious about that. It's such a large policy. I recognize that we're talking literally pennies on the dollar, but I think that's my job to point out where we might save $1 or $2 down the road. So.
And we can do that and still be able to, if we did that in the next couple of weeks, we'd be able to get it back to the 7-1 and reduce those premiums pretty easily.
Okay.
So, yeah,
thank you.
So maybe consensus around authorizing Leslie to sign with that caveat that they're going to work through that.
So yeah, as long as you feel comfortable,
I do.
once he's comfortable, sign it up.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You bet. Thank
Appreciate your work.
Thank
you betcha.
So we will move on to the items that fall under BOCC. It looks like MOU with City for Veterans Park static display. Are you comfortable with
I've been working on this a bit. If the board will recall, last time we discussed
Thank you.
the county participating in the aesthetic display. One of the concerns was control and ownership of the property in which the display was being placed. It's fairly complex, and I can go into a little bit more detail, but I've met with council from the county as well as Mr. Swanson from the city, and just went over the ownership and the leases and those types of things. The bottom line is, for the next, well, it was a 99-year lease agreement with the automatic renewal, should the county choose, of another 99 years. So we got like 180 some odd years left on that. It's the sole discretion of any type of capital construction to be done on that property of the Klamath County Commissioners. So if we want to put something there, or the city wants to put something there, ultimately the decision lies with the three of us. They are, as I understand it, the other question was, you know, what's the ROI on putting something like this in the park? The idea and the reason for the selection in the site, because quite honestly, if I'm just thinking selfishly, it wouldn't necessarily be my choice for the site. However, their hope is that they can place it in a way and then make modifications to the landscaping that it is very visible from Highway 97, and for it to be some type of a draw where people are wanting to come down, take pictures with the jet, yada, 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 that type of thing. So just really improve that first impression as you're coming down Highway 97. So I think those were the two questions that we had when we last left it, but I don't know if I covered the questions well.
I'm still very excited about it.
If you recall, so there's a MOU that we would have to sign in order for basically giving the city permission to do it. And then the ask of the county was for us to split the cost of putting up the display. The total cost, I believe, was $600,000, so ours would be $300,000. The last we talked about would come from the American Rescue Plan funding that we had in the like tourism type bucket.
Is the 600,000 a hard number, or is it a moving target?
It is the engineer's estimate. So they're doing all of the hard engineering now. Before they got started, an engineer did an estimate of what the overall design and construction would be of the structure that has to be created that will support the jet. So it's not bids from a contractor, because a contractor needs to have actual drawings to go off of. It is an engineer's estimate.
Does the city have the 300,000 set aside to do it, or are they talking about it like we are?
No, they have voted to allocate their 300. So staff took that to council, and council has approved their 300.
Did they use ARPA funds?
I'm not 100%, but that was my understanding of the conversation. I wasn't there at the meeting.
It is.
Hmm?
This is Natalie Parker, grant manager. It is on our allocated ARPA expenditures.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what's the board's pleasure on moving forward or not, and how to move forward?
So I have a question, and it's more for the two of you. I would really like some historical knowledge here, so help me. I know there's been a lot of conversations about that area of town and doing some things to make that area of town more welcoming and attractive, and I am 100% on board. I like this concept of the jet a lot. I think that's really neat, and it honors our veterans, and I think it sends a really cool message about our community and how we feel about our military, so I get it. But does it interfere with any other direction you commissioners were thinking about going in that area of town? And I don't say that in any way for you to think I don't like this project. I'm the new kid. So has there been a conversation last year that somebody said, I don't know if the jet fits into an idea, a concept? I'm just trying to think big picture and down the road.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So I think at least for me, what I want on both the sort of the entryways into town are things that really highlight the uniqueness of Klamath and what is, sort of what are our finer points or the things that we brag about. And I think Kingsley definitely fits into that
Absolutely.
piece. And I also think that we are at a time where it's really important that we prioritize the long time sort of commitment to and support of Kingsley, because as much as I do feel like it's stable, it's not a guarantee. I mean, there's a lot of communities across the country that have lost bases that they really care about. So I like that I think it shows us sort of stepping up to say Kingsley is very important to us, and then I think also from like the tourism angle, this is one of those things that's special about Klamath. So to answer I answered in a long way, but in a short way, yes, I think it's the direction we want to go as a vision.
Thank you for that. Last question I have of you two. Is it one of our jets?
Yes.
Even
So
better.
that's a yes, and and this will actually expand the conversation, so we'll get a little bit into the weeds here in a second, but yes, it's one of our jets. My dream is just thinking selfishly of Derek's, like, let's just place it in the middle of town where everybody that's Klamath can enjoy it, but that really isn't a tourism draw at that point, right? It's like there's nothing that's pulling people into town, and so I get trying to place it in a way where people can see it when they're driving by.
Well, and it's Veterans Park, and
And
we have
it's-
the memorial.
Yeah, and it's Veterans Park, which is obviously very important to me. So it all kind of pulls together. The fact that we have had Kingsley out there for as long as we have, the decades and decades and decades and decades, and don't have any type of static display inside our community is astonishing to me. I mean, the F-15 is not the first jet that we've had out there.
Right.
Shoot, there's people in town that flew different jets that have since been retired, and we ain't getting any of those. Now into the weeds part, I was asked by the base if we would like a tail flash as well, that we could place somewhere else inside our community. And obviously that was much, much, much cheaper, because you're not talking about an entire jet, it's just a tail flash that we could put somewhere else. And that could be something that we could stick somewhere within the community that could be, just more about us, where we can put up some kind of an ode to Kingsley versus this kind of thing. If we wanted to stick it maybe in the middle of the parking lot at the fairgrounds, or those types of places.
Well, here's Dave's 2 cents, because I'm sure you guys have talked about this a lot more than me, so let me see if I can get caught up in 1 minute or less. When I come into Klamath County on lots of sides, one of the first things I see is we honor our veterans. And that makes me very proud to live here. So I get reminded of that every time I come back to Klamath from visiting other counties. And we've made that a really big deal. And I think this jet, I think that we could articulate a return on investment, because that's important to me. I think we could articulate and we could show that there would be a lot more people coming into Vets Park, and then maybe having something to eat at some of our local establishments here, and staying the night at a great hotel we just built right there next to Veterans Park. So I think that's easy for me. $300,000 does sound like a big chunk of money, but I find comfort in the fact that we're splitting it with the city, and they have made the same commitment. We're not doing the heavy lifting. We're being good partners in a project that's good for the downtown and it's good for our county. And quite honestly, we talked in our meeting today how proud I was of our veterans. So I'm on board. I like this project a lot.
Great. So it sounds like there's consensus to go ahead and move forward with the contribution. Do you want to?
Yeah, we should probably, why don't I do this? Why don't I make a motion authorizing the chair to sign the memorandum of understanding between the city of Klamath Falls and Klamath County for the commitment of funds for Veterans Park static display, as well as allocate the $300,000 from the American Rescue Plan.
I'll second that. So we have a motion now to formalize it. Any other discussion before we vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks, guys. KCC childcare discussion continued from last week.
So this is last week, Commissioner Minty, you were here.
I did review.
Okay, good. So, just kind of circling back after folks had time to think about it, we said we'd just throw it on the following week. So what this is, to recap, Klamath Community College is looking to build a child care training facility, and that will provide child care for folks out there, as well as great students and graduates would be able to go out and provide child care within the community. Child care being one of those areas that we've identified as one of the stumbling blocks that we have to grow. Previously, KCC had acquired the property directly across the street. There's some challenges there, infrastructure, accessibility, those types of things. And in a conversation that we were having in a meeting about making some improvements in order to do that and the cost of doing those, the idea of the property that this board, acting as the board for Extension Service District, purchased on the corner of Hilliard and 39 came to mind. Had a brief conversation with Dr. Gutierrez about whether or not that would work. He gave that some thought, came back to me a few weeks later and said if I was able to receive that property, I can start working on putting a child care facility on there right away. We did ask that it be donated to the college. We've given $500,000 towards that project for development of a child care facility. This would be about another $250,000 donation to the college. The Extension Service District can't afford that, so we would have to purchase it as the county using American Rescue Plan's funds from Extension Service District and then donate the property then to KCC is the only way I could see us being able to afford doing it. So that's the review. We just need to go back with that. Well, is it someone want to do or not, I guess, or review more, or say no, great thought, but no thanks. We are starting to get up there as far as American Rescue Plan allocations from the county to KCC, as well as not just ARPA, but also, they have two major projects going right now. The apprenticeship program, which, how much should we give them in ARPA? $100,000, $500,000 to child care. So that's $600,000. This would take us to $850,000, and we've given them significant discounts in building permits and stuff like that for the other one. So we're probably in the course of a year getting up to scratching at $1 million in support of KCC. I would say, from my perspective, if we decided to do this, and I know that they're going to come and ask us when we decide to do some type of allocation process, that second tranche, to make another ask towards the apprenticeship center. If we did this, I'd probably say, hey, look, you guys have got your share. We're this. That's it.
Well, that's where my thought was. I do think somebody, an entity really needs to take the lead community-wide on the childcare issue. It's huge. In fact, I was just reading some survey results that were done locally that reflect that almost half of people say they've either quit a job or have left a job because of the childcare issue. Almost 50%. That makes it a huge workforce issue, which is, it definitely needs to be addressed. And so my hope is that maybe KCC would step into a leadership role with the development of this center on sort of the more broader issue.
Sure.
So I really do want to support them in that. I'll say that in one breath. In the other breath, my thought pattern was, we really do need to get this second round of ARPA grant review or grant process going. And couldn't they just apply for this particular project through that? We want the land and see what the review committee says. I think that's probably the most proper, although if it was, I could probably be talked into go ahead and agree with this, but then they are kind of out of the next one. That would be like their version. So, how are you feeling?
I'm bringing it as a concept. I would say for me, if we decided, hey, let's explore this, we want to move forward, it would need to go in steps. It would be, yeah, this works for us. However, this conversation has not been had with the staff over at Extension. So before pulling any triggers, that needs to happen. So there was no point in having that conversation if we're not interested.
So the $500,000 is for childcare already.
Yep.
So please.
Natalie Parker, grant manager for the county, let me just join you guys. I
I'm glad you're here.
need to tell you that, get you caught up on the $500,000 for KCC through ARPA, that is through the state, through link income funding. And that expenditure is a little bit different, there's a lot more reporting, and it also has to be utilized by 2024 as the date, not 2026, which is the regular ARPA date. So there is a little bit more time constraint. We could reallocate if we needed to and swap funding, but those have been approved through the state. So I would need to modify our grant with the state.
If they're not able to get their project done
If
by the
they're
end of
not.
2024.
That's correct, with that spending.
At their current location, I would not see their project being completed by the end of 2024 unless they were able to move.
Can you help me understand, Commissioner DeGroot, a little bit better? The building across the street from them has some issues, or excuse me, the property, building a building, I'm saying that right, on the property across the street has some challenges, but how is one down the road better?
Sure. So start with the one that they currently own, where it's at. So there was two challenges. One was utilities not being to the property and available to serve their needs, water, sewer, those types of things. The other is they want to be able to make the property accessible by foot. And the elevation difference between where the college sits on one side of the highway and where that property sits make that truly impossible. You know, they talked about a bridge. Well, to meet ADA, you would have to have a ramp that went from the college basically down to Hilliard. Right? I mean, it's just ridiculous. The elevation distance is pretty great. Now, at the site that Extension owns, there is already identified in the transportation system plan for that to become a signalized intersection based on development. So this would be moving us even closer to that. And then all you need is a crosswalk. And it also already has all the utilities to it. So basically you have a site that's shovel ready and pedestrian accessible versus a site that has neither of those things.
Okay, that helps. I don't know that I'm on board with $750,000 for the childcare, and I really appreciated what Commissioner Minty said about the need. I see the need as well, and I've seen and experienced some of the challenges she's talking about with knowing people that it was cheaper to stay home than pay for childcare and quit their jobs. I just feel like that's a big chunk of change, and I don't know that I want to, as a commissioner, buy that property from a district to just turn around and sell to KCC. I'd like to stay out of the brokering business altogether. If they'd like to work with the district and buy that property, wonderful. And if they'd like to come back on the second round and ask us maybe for $100,000 that we gave to KCC to help them buy that property, I might be okay with that. But that's brokering the property for another $250,000 when they've already got $500,000 is pretty steep for me. I have some struggles with that.
So then it's really, hey, yeah, you could probably still use the property should conversations go well with, let me say everyone to talk. I mean, ultimately it's up to the three of us as the board for the district, but we need to talk to staff of the district as well. But you guys need to pay for it, and it's about $250,000.
And apply when we have a second round and see, maybe they
Sure.
can make a good argument to the ARPA committee that they need additional funds to do that.
Yeah, and then maybe, we negotiate a deal that's a good deal. If the land value's $250, do we give them a good neighbor deal and knock a little bit of that off? I don't know.
Yeah.
Totally speaking out of turn maybe, but it seems like
I think it's a great conversation, and I can easily relate that.
All right. Okay, thank you. So Downtown Association ex officio.
I met with Darren, there we go, that's what I was trying to say the other day, and he asked me if I would be interested in being an ex officio board member for the Cotton Falls Downtown Association. I was when I was the chief, and I have a really close working relationship with the Downtown Association. I've really enjoyed working with the Downtown Association and kind of knowing what's going on and being a part of those conversations, so I said I'd bring it up. So there you go.
Go forth and prosper, my
Yeah, if
friend.
you wanna do it, I say, have fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great association.
Okay.
Good.
Cool. Okay, finally, under other county business, apparently last week was decided that Dan would come back. Is that the
Not
case?
exactly.
Not
Okay,
exactly.
well then you need to actually be on the agenda. But that's
Well,
okay,
I
I'll
would have.
allow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dan Golden, Director of Klamath County Juvenile Department. I would have asked to be on the agenda, but the sort of problems in trying to get a blue sheet through manifested themselves Monday afternoon. And I think at our last admin meeting where you were not present, I asked, should I now send a blue sheet through? And I think everybody was pretty much in agreement with, yeah, send it through. And of course, you all know that when you submit a blue sheet, there are numerous stops along the way where it might fall short, be rejected, and have to kind of go through some other steps. So it was rejected by, and by the way, these are the blue sheet and attached documents that were actually submitted. Do you need one? Okay. And rejected by Leslie doing her job, you know, asking for additional documentation, an application, attach an application that was submitted and change category to prior approved, and list what meeting and date the board approved the item. Well, we didn't actually have it approved at admin, but if this is a contract, this does not have any contract information and no place for the board to sign. So I sent her back an email saying, well, I don't have the actual original application because it was submitted online to a like Survey Monkey kind of data stream that apparently is a contract service that the Oregon Health Authority contracts with to get these things out quickly. There was no place to capture the data on my end, and when I 3 weeks ago asked, hey, can you folks dig out a copy of the application, send it to me, the Oregon Health Authority said, well, we can ask our contractor, but we might not be able to get it. So I still haven't gotten anything from them. And also, there is no contract. It's House Bill 4004, and then in a follow-up, Leslie asked me to furnish a signed copy of the House bill. Well, the latest copy on OLIS is the enrolled version that is not signed by anybody. But we wouldn't have had the money already sent to us if the legislation hadn't been completed at the legislative and gubernatorial level. So, and $170,000 has actually been electronically transferred to the county and is waiting for a decision to begin the disbursement. So, at any rate, Leslie's asking for a prior approved item for this. So I thought I probably got to come back and ask, can we put together a prior approved item so that this can then proceed through that process and the allocation.
Okay, you're going to not like this, but I don't want to use the word bonus anywhere. I
You
want
wanna
to
what?
use the word bonus.
Oh,
It's in this document a lot.
okay.
I would prefer to use a term something along the lines of, you know, retention compensation or something like that.
Okay.
I think because that's what it really is, and it's through a grant.
Right.
I think if I'm just, you know, a member of the public who hasn't been following this discussion,
Okay.
it starts to look like, well, why is the county handing out bonuses? That's weird. And that's not what this is. So I would prefer, you know, language is important, and I would prefer to use language that's a little more specific and not the word bonus.
And
Well, that was easy.
Commissioner, I just want to point out that in the actual House bill, where it states provider must use at least 75% of the grant on direct compensation to the provider's staff in the form of wages, benefits, and bonuses. It's
We
in
can
the
call it a
bill.
retention benefit.
Call it a benefit. Okay.
We know what it is, but their language is bad too.
Yeah. Okay.
So one of the things that so I've been having conversations as well, and we did receive some feedback via email. I don't know if the board has been able to see it from both finance director and HR director on this.
Right.
one of so there's a few points that are brought up that I think are good for discussion. Probably the easiest one to address that's the least amount of controversy, I guess, would be because of how compensation is calculated for the purposes of wage equity, yada, 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 that we have to follow. I don't remember all the words. That'd be a better, ask Amanda for an explanation because she's the one that told me. But as she walked through it, it made a whole lot of sense that the disbursements all needed to be had prior to September 28th. So that being said, and I understand wanting to spread them out, these probably need to be just done all at once in one shot and probably done in September. Which also gives us a little bit more time to work out all of the other pieces of the details. The other questions that I believe were brought up that I have not had an opportunity to get an answer to, and we probably should at some point just kind of had a broad discussion with everybody in the room so we can work it all out. Would be the easiest way, in my opinion, other than piecemealing, is truly nailing down who's eligible for these dollars. I know there were questions about, are there other people outside of the juvenile department that would also be eligible for these dollars? And I don't believe the question was answered, although, Director, you had a great response, and I appreciate that response as well. And then the last piece, and probably one of the other areas where I do have concerns, is where the other 25% is spent. We've tried to get away from stipends. We've done a really good job. It just creates all kinds of headaches internally. I would like to look at other means of recruitment and retention that HR could work with, whether that be how we market for folks,
Right.
how we give,
HR definitely has ideas.
potentially, being able to pay expenses for folks to get here, that kind of thing, and maybe focus on the recruitment effort with those dollars, and maybe use the 75% on the retention piece to the employees, and the 25% maybe more on the recruitment, so that we can also fill the positions for the director, and I know that's eligible for that. Anyway, I'm rambling, and I know I'm rambling, but I think that we should.
I mean, I totally agree with you on the recruitment one. I know
Yeah.
HR has some really good ideas. I don't think we have to figure that out at this meeting, but I do think that's the direction.
I think this is a much larger discussion is what I guess what I'm getting at, and that's just kind of throwing in where I'm at so far on this overall.
Sure.
My only concern now is that by August 1st, I have to file a report with the Oregon Health Authority about what have we determined that this is dispersed to, what are we doing? And that's like just over a month from now. So, it's going to be hard to pin this down in a short amount of time and begin a disbursement schedule or begin something to meet that. Secondly, keep in mind that the House bill specifically exempts the Wage Discrimination Act in Oregon from being applied to these funds. So equity concerns, concerns for, kind of how we're, able to help certain people over others, that kind of thing, pretty much waived by the legislature in this bill. And thirdly, the 75% have to go to the providers by the terms of definitions of behavioral health care, meaning services and supports for individuals with mental health substance abuse disorders. And the providers are identified as a number of different categories, including providing behavioral health care through a program contracting with or administered by the Oregon Youth Authority. That's KCR. So the KCR employees are direct providers, and what I would submit are other facility and department employees that provide support to the clients directly, not to the program in some amorphous manner. but directly to the client's concern they're being served are within the scope of the legislation. And my other concern is when we're audited someday by the Oregon Health Authority about how did you use these funds, I don't want to have to try to defend that we use them in things that are very far afield from these definitions. I want to stay really close to those definitions.
Sure.
So I guess I just need direction on what are our next steps.
Well, I think it appears that formally you need to be able to sort of have the grant agreement piece, right? I mean, that's what risk and contracts was indicating. So for me, I'm comfortable with, so long as the change from the word bonus to the word benefit on each of this sheet, I'm comfortable with doing that like this. And I'm also comfortable, I think, I understand your concern about getting to, getting to that August deadline and being able to say how we use the funds, but I think if you're designating 75% for this retention benefit, I think we can say 25% will be used for recruitment, and we will be working with human resources on what is it? If the goal is recruitment, the strategies or tactics are these three things or something like that. I mean, I think that will probably suffice, and we can dial that in with HR. But I think that gets you probably where you need to be in terms of next steps, so long as the board doesn't have different direction from the director.
Yeah, and again, Leslie's just doing her job. I mean, this is the most non-conforming kind of grant
Oh,
that
yeah.
I've ever
It's
seen.
odd,
No,
yeah.
It's
this-
a real
No,
oddball.
she
and,
needed, I think this is very important to
and,
have this.
so I mean, I'm not faulting anybody in the process, but I do want to have clarity going forward so we can get the same process. We're in a position to meet that first reporting deadline at the end of July with, kind of, this is our plan, here's what we're doing with these funds. And then hopefully they accept what we're doing.
Right.
Good to go.
Does anyone on the board see a different
Nope,
approach or
I
different
do
angle?
not.
Everyone's good with that? Okay. So consensus to move forward as I've laid it out?
I think so. I mean, I think there's still a lot of discussion to be had, but
So are you good with that, Mr.
Yep.
Mr. G? All right. Anything else for the board that would fall under other county business?
Let me just ask before we go very far away. So am I bringing you back a blue sheet for a prior approved item?
That's a great question for them, because I'm still trying to figure out the blue sheet process, so.
I haven't either, and I've been here 30 years.
Right.
Yeah, I can't help you there, my friend, at all.
Well, we can do it like this. I'll move that the BOCC hereby approve the acceptance of the HB 4004 grant from the OHA to the juvenile department of $170,863.94. The funds to be used for retention benefit for juvenile department staff and other permitted recruitment and retention purposes.
So I just wanna, both so looking at this, both the summer and winter thing was excluded, so we can just make sure, and thank you for your comment, Director, but I also wanna double,
I just deemed it a retention
then-
benefit.
retention benefit. For purposes. Make some changes in the background. Okay, and that doesn't really tell us how we're gonna spend it yet, or when we're gonna spend it yet, just that we're gonna accept the dollars.
Right.
Is the only decision that we're making.
Right, this is pretty much going back to like not pretending, but
It
since
goes
this
back a
was
couple
so
weeks.
strange how this all rolled out, this is as if the director went back and, as we normally would, and said, can I apply for this grant? And we've got 6 months, and it's more of the first step.
Right.
Even though we're
Okay.
probably on like the third step.
Yeah, and I feel comfortable that gets us back 2 weeks when we found out the money was transferred and we said, okay, go forth and conquer. That's pretty much what we said to Dan right there. I think
Okay,
that's us
sorry.
right there.
Then I'm good with the second.
Okay.
So motion made and seconded, all in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, Dan, this is very messy, but we're going to go ahead and sign this so that then staff can put it forth as a prior approval.
I'll clean it up.
Yep,
send it
and give
back.
it to us.
Yeah, that's,
But this is just so that they know it's.
Okay.
Okay, anything else for other county business? before we
Yes.
adjourn?
I was asked if the board would be having a, if the board would be having a county barbecue this year.
Thank you.
You
Uh,
mentioned something about that.
Yeah, so, a couple of dates were thrown out in July, those really don't work, it would probably have to be sometime in August. So I would work with the fairgrounds, or have staff work with the fairgrounds to kind of solidify a date. It was not budgeted. For whatever reason, it was missed, it wasn't budgeted. It's probably gonna cost, to throw a nice barbecue for all of the county employees. In the past, it's been $1,500, or probably $2,000. To be able to do, hot dogs, hamburgers, and whatever veggie stuff you end up saying we need. Those tofu things were weird bricks, by the way, and I love you, mean it, but whew, yeah, let's not do that again. I think one person ate one, and it was you. So,
And even she had a bottle of water.
right,
I thought you
choked
said
it
bottle of
down.
wine.
I would have been 6. But anyway, do we want to have one? Do we want to figure out how to budget for that? If so, I can work with staff and kind of figure that
Yeah,
out.
I definitely think we should. It's very fun. You'll enjoy it. And HR may
Yeah.
have something in her wheelhouse.
Not doing
but
it,
if
not doing a dump tank this year.
So-
we can figure it out.
I got a couple ideas.
Sure.
I called Mark Wilrett today, and they were at the city's barbecue, and we did that for our city staff every year, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And we had a huge turnout, and it's a great way to say thank you and be supportive of staff, and I'm all on board. But one of the things I was thinking is can we do it? Because I'm still trying to understand process, and does it send a good message? With ex-Commissioner Boyd not being here, I know our budget is a little fatter this year. Can we eat it out of Commissioner's budget? Training budget maybe, or something like that Donnie didn't spend?
Probably. We can probably find it.
I would be fully on board with
Yes.
our budget paying for it.
Yeah, because it would.
We'd have to find it because it's actually next fiscal year,
I understand that.
because it's post July 1.
I understand that.
We'll find them.
But
The money's actually, the money piece, because it is, in the grand scheme of things, so little, is the easy piece. It's gonna be coordinating. Every year, Sandy and Haley just do a disastrous amount of work to pull this off.
well, might I recommend that the department directors help the commissioners do it? That's how we did it at the city, was the directors provided the lunch for everyone.
We'll have all 27 of them.
Yep, that'll be fun. Okay. Sounds like there's agreement. Like, let's do it.
Cool.
Not the week of the 21st of August.
Yeah, there's
I will not be here.
actually a lot going on in August. Like a lot of people are gone and stuff, but we'll figure out something.
So I'll start working on that, and I'll bring it back.
Yeah, just
Cool.
make sure.
Thank you. That'll be fun.
We're adjourned at 2:22.